Our guest today is a wife and mum who's had a very common journey that lots of us have gone through, struggled with infertility, then finding out she had a miracle child and making a decision that no parent ever wants to have to make. Lauriann, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege to be here to share the story.
What an incredible journey that you've gone through. It's a really common story that we hear that lots of families these days struggle with infertility.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey.
It's interesting to be back in this position and looking back at the journey. I think when you travel through something so significant, you never really truly believe that you're going to get to this point or reach a point where you can actually share and be in a place of I guess peace. But yeah, this story is pretty raw, and I know for me personally, I had my job, I had my career as a teacher, and my husband and I, we always desired to have a family, but first and foremost I just wanted to be a mum. And the journey, I guess, to becoming a mum wasn't as easy as I'd had hoped or thought it might be. I thought it was pretty easy. A lot of people just have children and that's how it is. But living in Western Australia for our first 7 years of marriage, and it didn't happen. And there was a lot of fear, a lot of heartache, a lot of wrestling with why not me, or just seeing other families and other women being able to have children very easily. It was a 7-year journey before our miracle boy Levi, he came along, and that was a season in itself. So I really do remember after he was born just going, I just hope and pray it doesn't take that long again, because I just it does emotionally, it takes you to a very low place. It was probably after Levi was born, we obviously wanted to start and have another baby, and was in a place and ready to, but that's when the downward spiral really hit for me personally, in my desire to have another baby, and my mental health, and just just for Levi to have a sibling. And he was at the age, I think it was about 3 years old. I very vividly remember him saying, "Mummy, why can't I have why can't I have a brother or sister? Like, who will be my brother or sister?" And thinking in his mind it could just happen instantly. It's a lot more common than I realised it to be. And it's still raw, and still talking about our losses. We had several miscarriages, and that for me really kind of, I guess, brought me to a place of real fear that this is not going to happen. And I think in our journey with working with a lot of professionals and doctors and trying to get to the root cause and the bottom line of what was happening, there was not a lot of hope. You go to a place where not a lot of, even my husband really struggled to really understand how I was feeling in that situation, but knowing that we really wanted children and wanted another little one. And so after I guess being in that medical world and being confronted with the reality that you may not have another child, that was pretty hard, because I wasn't ready to give up.
Yeah, such a common story, isn't it, that we hear that people are just really struggling with infertility and the heartbreak of having miscarriage. I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those emotions of losing an unborn child?
I think our first miscarriage, that was really hard, because it was 12 weeks, and that's the first trimester, and you start to prepare and think this, like, you start thinking of names, you start thinking of who they are, how they're going to fit into their family, when they're going to be born. I remember it was actually just before Christmas back in 2019, and we just shared our news with our family, announced it, and then 2 days later there we are having our ultrasound, and to go into that ultrasound, just full of joy, and after the journey of what we'd been through, just going, this is it, like, we finally get to meet and see this little one's heartbeat. And then at 12 weeks there's no heartbeat, and to go through that and to actually it took a very long time of healing. There were a lot of tears and there was a lot of crying and a lot of time on my own, even with my husband. It was a real struggle with us, and for me to articulate that. Guys struggle with it in different ways. And for me, it was just getting out of bed in the morning, being able to get up and go to work, being able to look after Levi at that time, who was 3. Everything just around me came crashing down. And it wasn't actually until my husband, in such a loving way, just said to me, like, I know I can't give you exactly what you need emotionally right now. And that's where I was so thankful for him, because he just said it's probably would be great to be able to start talking that out and seek some help. Again, we fell pregnant about a year or so later, and that, I think, again, I didn't allow myself to mentally go, this is actually going to happen. I had always been preparing for loss and just, never really dealt with that. And so, after we lost our second little one, it was, again, that downward spiral. I knew from the first time I couldn't go back to that place because I wasn't well. And so to be able to actually talk about it and heal after our second miscarriage, that's I think when it really hit, that our medical team just said, we really need to start looking at other options now.
Yeah. So you would have really needed a support network around you.
Absolutely. It was huge. Family, my mum, thankfully they're not too far away, but it was actually a time when COVID all hit as well, and so that it was pretty raw because my husband had lost his work. I think looking back at that time now, that was actually a real blessing. It was that, I think for me personally, was a real time of letting go, but letting people carry you.
I can imagine that it's so tough for all of us to be able to accept help. I think there's a thing inside of us that we know we can do this on our own, but really we need people to come around us and support us.
And for us, another big part of us is our faith and who we are. And I look at our community of our people that we go to church with, and as a Christian, I look at our walk and the journey we've gone on, and I look back and I go, there are such pivotal moments in our journey that our church really stepped in, and the prayer for us and the provision of people in our life was, I look at that and go, the community of our church was a big blessing, a huge blessing to just really encourage us and uplift us in prayer.
So you had little Levi, he was 3, and then all of a sudden you had some amazing news that you found out you were pregnant again. Yes,
this was, by the time, he was 4.5, we amazingly, I think we were at the stage where basically I'd had, surgery, I had just basically looking at my body and what's actually the root cause, what was wrong, and didn't know after all these years, and was diagnosed with stage 3 endometriosis, and had no idea. It was just but it was an answer. It was like, okay, this is pretty much why I've been struggling with infertility for so long. And so that was where they basically said we need to start looking and preparing for IVF. And in my heart it was like, okay, that's another journey. Like, you've got to be knowing that that's for me, that's the last protocol, that's it, that's your final straw. And I think for us, I wasn't really ready to go down that path just yet. About 6 months later, fell pregnant. We were actually preparing, that week was our very first IVF. Like the first meeting to prepare and just to talk about it and just look at options. And I just remember going, okay, don't really want to do this. And I remember it was that week, and I found out I was pregnant, but there was in my mind just it's not true. Like, I think I'd pretty much, it's a sad place to be in because you desperately want this, and you're overfilled with joy, but you're like, don't let your heart feel too much or prepare, because this may end in another miscarriage. And I just really needed to, it was a day-by-day process. I think it was probably not until I was about 15 weeks pregnant, which I actually started to talk about it. It was actually at 20 weeks where we had our morphology scan, where we actually, it was like we get to actually see and look at all the little features and, prepare to, really, I guess, for us to make this feel real.
Yes.
And see for my husband as well. And so, we went into that 20-week morphology scan, and it was incredible just to be able to see, because it's quite a lot of detail on what they go through. But I remember the sonographer just throughout it, because I remember Levi's, it only took about 45 minutes, and this took a long time. We were there for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I remember her focusing quite significantly around the brain of our little one. And I just remember I just wanted a simple and easy pregnancy, without any more grief or trauma. It was not until she actually said, I think I might just go and get our head doctor, and I might just get them to come and just have another look, everything seems to be okay, I just need a second opinion. And we'd actually just journeyed with a family in our church that had gone through quite a lot of significant implications with their little one. And I remember her saying to me, when they bring in the head doctor, that's often a sign of there's something not right, or we just need another opinion. And I remember I was looking at the ceiling and just going white, because I just knew it hit pretty hard.
How awful.
Yeah, going, I just couldn't understand. So when they came back and they said, sometimes these little ones are just really active, and I'm going, I'm hoping this is just an active one. But we drove away with not any information or clarification. I received a phone call, and that's where our world came crashing down, and it was the beginning of a pretty heartbreaking. The news was heartbreaking when they basically said, we've got a lot of concerns. We found something around your little one's brain. And the tears just flooded, because it was anything around the brain or the heart, it's the worst. Your brain goes straight to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And they just basically, from then on, it was, we need to meet with you, and we need to get a second opinion. We need you in the next probably 2 to 3 days, and we need to get another look at this little one's brain. And that was probably the hardest 48 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Preparing to go in to have a second diagnosis.
Oh, and the journey that you've been on through infertility is hard enough, but then having the awful diagnosis and the stress, I can't even imagine how that must have been for you and your husband.
It was, I think we felt like we'd reached our point of enough's enough. Yeah. What else can we take on? But just there's something inside of you that just goes, you just have to keep fighting.
Yeah.
It's already we truly believed it was already a miracle that I was pregnant when our specialist and the people working with us said it's very unlikely that you will fall pregnant naturally. Going in and actually seeing them again, focusing on the brain, I was going, what are you looking at, and what does this mean? And so they basically shared with us, we're looking at 2 potential outcomes here. And because at this stage our little one was 20 weeks, still very little, and the brain is still developing, they basically gave us 2 options. And they said, your little one, there's a cyst that's formed, and what's called a Blake's pouch cyst, which we had never heard. It was just all these words and terminology, and they said basically it sits right behind the cerebellum in the brain, and if it's the Blake's pouch cyst, then it is more on the mild form of disability and something that we can work with, and could be very, very mild. Or it could be a second outcome, which is called Dandy-Walker malformation, which is the more severe spectrum of disability, which could potentially mean 24/7 care for the rest of their life. At that point, at 20 weeks, they said we can't actually do any further we need to allow your little one's brain to actually grow a little bit more. And so we need to allow it to get to 22 weeks where it's a little bit more formed, so we can actually do an MRI scan and get a little bit more information. And so that, again, 2 weeks of sitting in a place of where to now? What are we preparing for? We either have a little one that is a mild disability all the way in the spectrum of 24/7 care. And so that was heavy. The whole journey from 20 weeks onwards was finding out a little bit of information each step of the way. But yeah, it was pretty confronting when we reached the point where when we sat down and we actually heard the diagnosis after that MRI. And that was when they actually diagnosed and said, we've actually found out that your little one after the MRI actually has the worst of the outcome of what we were preparing for. It's actually the Dandy Walker malformation. And our world came crumbling down. Because I think for us, we had been praying. Our faith, our church, we really truly believed that that we had to cry out to the Lord and pray for a miracle. And at that point, hearing that it was the worst of the outcome, a part of your heart just goes, this is not how it's meant to be, or this is not what we'd prayed for. We thought, at that moment that we could ask and a miracle would happen. But I had to keep remembering, it's already a miracle that I'm pregnant. And I think that's what really carried me through. When they shared this news, it was just, I remember just going into this room and just hearing them go through all the medical terminology, and they just said, so we need to make a decision and we've got a few options. And it was, I'll never forget that moment that you walk in, my husband and I are sitting there, they said, look, the outcome's not great, and they start to really prepare you for it's the worst case outcome. And they said, we don't know what your journey's been like, but they start looking at really how stable you are as a person, your mental health, your capacity to carry and prepare for a baby that could have 24/7 care for the rest of their life. And they said, sadly, we can look at the option of terminating this pregnancy. I won't forget that moment, because it was, for me, that was real. That for them, they saw no hope. They saw no hope. They saw that this little baby didn't have much of a chance of life. And to actually hear the words come out their mouth that was the first option of suggesting to abort our little one, and that we shouldn't go any further. It's something inside of me, it just hit pretty hard, and we just straight away, my husband and I, there was no question, no doubt, no second thought. We just said absolutely not. No matter the disability, no matter what the outcome, no matter how hard this journey is going to be, no matter what we have to face, I just said, we want this baby so much. And it was from that point that I realised how serious we were.
Seeing that the emotions of it all are still so raw.
It feels like I go through parts of our journey. I remember every moment very in those rooms and in that hospital. It's very clinical. It's very in the medical world and in their space. It's what they often are dealing with and seeing quite often. But for me and for my husband, this was all new. We didn't know what we were facing or what we were preparing for. We didn't know if they'd seen this quite often or similar, and but for them it is very much worst case scenario. This is the steps and procedures, and we just need to follow these procedures, and let's basically start the process of diagnosing and getting a result. And it's without knowing the journey of what a couple have gone through and what they've reached to get to this point. And so for us, I'm very thankful for my husband, and I'm very thankful for our relationship.
Yeah.
But it didn't come without a lot of stress and pressure and trying to navigate something that we both had never gone through. And so it was, still pretty raw.
Yeah. So tell us about the moment that your baby was born. I bet there was fear and joy and so many emotions in that, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah. So the journey from that 22 weeks up to that point, we were very closely monitored. That there was requests every 3 weeks. We had to go in, and it was basically just looking again at our little baby's brain and looking at every intricate detail. So thankfully, in each ultrasound, the fluid wasn't building up, which meant that they could rule out they were going to put a shunt into our little baby's brain to reduce and release the pressure, which would mean that they would have to intervene early and bring on the labour early. But I think for me personally, it was, I understood that the medical world and medical team, they have all the diagnosis, they have all the instruments, they have everything to monitor, but at the same time this was a diagnosis that they didn't even know the answer to. They didn't know the results. And so right up into the end, I remember there was a real push, a real pressure to actually induce early. I wanted to allow this little one to remain in the womb as long as possible, and so we just kept pushing back, saying, no, this baby stays in the womb. This is the safest place for this baby to remain. And so, amazingly, they wanted this little one by 39 weeks, but I actually, she came at 41 weeks.
Wow,
so she was well and truly overdue, but it was actually a joy just to know that she was, every part of her development was able to happen as much as possible. Still right up to that point, I remember our final ultrasound where at 39 weeks my husband said to them, so what we're seeing, it's all still there? And they said, yep, the cyst is still there, the fluid build up, everything's still there. The damage was very much impacting the development. And he said, is there any way or any chance that you think that this potentially could resolve itself or heal? And they said, look, it's very unlikely. This little one has had it right the whole way. And so that was hard to hear, because we were preparing, we knew that we were about to give birth. And still we were sitting in uncertainty. We had no further clarification or anything that could define what this baby or this little one was going to look like. We didn't know whether our little one was going to be able to walk, talk, say mum or dad. There was developmental issues that they said, may not be able to feed. When you give birth, you may not be able to feed or latch on. And so when I had Savannah, our little girl, she arrived at 41 weeks. I remember meeting and seeing her little face for the first time. We didn't actually know we were having a boy or a girl. It was actually part of the joy of just, we needed a sense of something to really hold on to, and joy of meeting who this child was at the end. And I remember looking at her for the very first time when they passed her to me, and I just looked at her first, that first connection, and look at her, because for me, to reach that point and to get to the end and actually hold her was all I had desired. I just couldn't wait to meet her and or meet this baby and hold them. And I remember looking at her face for the first time and just going, you are perfect. You are absolutely perfect. And I just, to see her face and go, it was you all along. You were the one inside. And that's how a lot of mums, that's how a lot of women, they feel with dads when they see their babies, like, this is who you were. And a lot of fear just went. There was just this unexplainable peace beyond all understanding that everything was actually going to be okay. But yeah, I still didn't know.
Yeah.
That was just the beginning.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So why is Savannah such a miracle?
It's a good question. It's a lot of people talk about the word miracle, and a lot of people, I think that word's often thrown around, but for me personally and my family and my husband, with my faith and, you know, believing that miracles do happen, I truly didn't think that I would ever experience a miracle, like a true miracle that was visibly tangible and that you could see it happen. And Savannah is an absolute miracle that she's even here in the first place. But at the same time, when they began the testing and they said we need to do that final MRI, and that's huge. That was preparing for that final MRI, that this is the result now, that we work out and know the diagnosis of what we're preparing for. And they basically feed them milk, you feed your baby, and then they like to sedate them so that they don't move at all.
Yeah.
And again, I just, as a mother and in my instincts, I think we just truly believe that, I just wanted to allow this final process. We didn't actually sedate Savannah, we just wanted to, I wanted to feed her and just allow it to happen. Yeah. And we just prayed over her. A lot of people were praying for this final diagnosis, and she did not move at all for that whole entire MRI. And they got the clearest images. They said, we don't have to do the MRI again, we've got everything we need. That was on the Friday, and so we had to wait. We said we don't necessarily need to know the results, but we're happy to wait. And so by the Monday, 3 days later, we got that final result. And that, again, that's a moment we will never forget, as our doctor came in, and you're sitting with this weight and heaviness of going, okay, what are we preparing for? And she came into the room, and she was actually 36 weeks pregnant herself.
Oh, wow.
And we were just chatting and talking about just how well Savannah had been doing initially, and just looking at her, and family being able to meet her. And she just said, well, in other good news, let's go through the report, let's talk about it. We're going, okay, good news, all right, okay, let's go through the good news first. And she's just started to go through this long list, and she just said, so as far as Dandy Walker malformation, there is absolutely no trace or evidence of the Dandy Walker. We've found no trace of it at all.
How amazing.
The tears just started. My husband and I just looked at each other, and we just were in shock and disbelief, but at the same time, we were like, a miracle has actually, we've just witnessed a miracle. And she said, and we said, so what about the cyst? Where's the cyst? What's happened with this cyst that they were monitoring? And she said, no, there's no cyst at all. There is, that's gone. And we just said, so what is it that you found? She said, there's no fluid. Your baby's brain is perfect. There is nothing there.
Goodness.
In that moment, we were in tears, and even our doctor, she was in tears, and she just, she said, I don't get to witness this often enough. Like, I don't get to see babies traveling through this whole journey with a diagnosis and reach the end. And it is clear. And we just, there was a lot of emotion that just came from that, because I think we journeyed and prayed specifically for a miracle and complete healing. But through our journey, I remember specifically going, I believe in miracles and I believe that they happen, but I didn't truly believe that that could happen for us. And you often look at times, you go, oh, that might happen for that family, or here it happens for other people. You go, this is too big. This is way too big for God to actually, there's that hope. There is a real hope. We were just so thankful in that moment that God had answered our prayers, in an incredible way. The prayers of so many people, our church family, people all around that had been covering us, and just knew our story. What a miracle.
How incredible. That is just, the only word that comes to me is amazing.
Yeah.
That's all that's just coming to me. It's just, what an incredible story. And how is Savannah now?
Yeah, she's, it's actually amazing because she's turned 1, so she's 1 now, and to just see what she's able to do, this is the past year with her is not the year that I would ever or was thinking that we would have. You know, we were preparing for specialist appointments quite regularly, and here she is this week beginning and starting to walk, and never thought that we would, you know, have a little one that would be able to walk, and she is a chatterbox. She's feeding herself. Like, it's just, I think I have not, this journey I just don't take for granted. Through this journey of this past year, it really has, I've been wrestling a lot with the fact that we rely so heavily on medical support, and you know, they have a wealth of knowledge and they've got all the instruments and information, yet they don't know the final picture. They see images, but they don't know the final result or diagnosis. And for me, I'm just, I was able to share at the Walk for Life, you know, event early this year, and I really have such a strong desire to share Savannah's story with people because there is such a message of hope, and that it makes me think of all these little babies that are given these diagnoses, the worst case scenario, and yet they don't get given a chance. I'm so thankful that we stood firm and we fought for our little girl, and that we had to really rely on our faith and trust that God is actually the creator of this little child, and He is the creator of each and every child conceived, and that we had to just trust Him. That He would carry us.
Lauriann, what an incredible story. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us. I'm just blown away. That's just so amazing. Thank you, and join us again next time on Living Proof.